G'day humans! Today I'm doing the over 30 book tag. I'm well and truly over 30, so I thought, why not? Give it a go, sounds like me. So this tag was originally created by Emily at INKNOTBLOOD, and I'll put a link down below. So the first prompt is, name one of your favourite books that features a protagonist who is over 30 years old. So for this I've chosen The Restorer by Sharon Hink. Now, this is a portal fantasy. It follows the usual tropes of someone from our world travelling into an alternate fantasy world in another dimension. They'll often find some kind of a supernatural destiny and have all sorts of adventures. Now, often in these kind of books, it's a child or maybe a teenager that goes into the fantasy world through the portal. In this book, it was a soccer mum. So, very much an adult. Obviously, I'm not a mum, but I am a dad, and so I identified with this. You know, a parent going into this fantasy world, wanting to get back for your kids, for your marriage. So I found that quite an interesting take on the genre, and a lot of fun. So number 2, name a book that represents who you were when you were younger. So for this one, I chose Ready Player One by Ernest, Cline. I'm sure you're familiar with this book. It's all about virtual reality. The protagonist is a young guy who goes into the virtual reality world, spends most of his time there, and goes on a hunt for these 3 Easter eggs in the game. When I was a kid, I was a nerd, just like I am now. I've always been a nerd. I always will be. I love video games and geeky movies and all that kind of stuff when I was a kid. I would have loved to have gone into a virtual reality world like the Oasis. That would have been a lot of fun. In fact, the search for the 3 eggs kind of reminds me of the search for the 3 treasures or the 3 keys in the early King's Quest games. It was always 3 things that you had to find on your quest. And of course, the character is obsessed with 80s pop culture for reasons that are relevant in the story. And, I was into various 80s pop culture things because it was the 80s. I watched Knight Rider and Voltron, Airwolf, Star Trek The Next Generation, all that stuff. So, yeah, I think that's a fairly good picture of what I was like when I was younger. So, number 3, name a book that represents where you are in life now. Now, this one was a little bit harder. So, I was looking for a book, about a protagonist who is a husband and a father and works a normal job. Not a lot of books that immediately came to mind with that kind of character. Especially since I read science fiction and fantasy, they're not about a normal guy working a normal job and his family life and all that. But I chose The Man He Never Was by James L. Rubart. So, the protagonist in this story is a husband and a father, and he's got a bit of an anger issue. And one morning, he wakes up, and 10 years have gone by, which he has no memory of. As far as he's concerned, he saw his wife yesterday morning, but from her perspective, he's been missing for 10 years, and she's moved on with her life. And suddenly he reappears, and she's like, well, where have you been? So she's wanting answers, and she's hesitant to let him back into her life because of all the issues that his anger problem caused in their marriage and in his relationship with his kids. So he's got to try and prove himself and win back the trust of his family while figuring out what has happened to him in the last 10 years and trying to deal with his anger problem. So all these things kind of come together, and there's this secret organization that he discovers, and his faith comes into it, and he really has to deal with these issues. So I found that to be a really good read, and it was about someone in my kind of stage of life. Number 4, name a book that represents something that has never changed about you. Well, for this, I chose Star Trek Federation by Judith and Garfield Reeves-Stevens. I've always been a Star Trek fan, and this is one of my favourite Star Trek books. It's a bit of a thicker one for your average TV tie-in, It's a crossover story. As you can see from the cover, Kirk in the classic TV series era and Picard in the Next Generation TV series era. Now, if you're a Star Trek geek, you might be thinking, well, hang on, that's a canon violation. Picard and Kirk didn't meet until Star Trek Generations. And this book does not violate that. It's a subtle crossover and done quite cleverly, and I really enjoyed this book. It also delves quite a lot into the character of Zefram Cochrane. And don't get me wrong, I love Star Trek First Contact. It is my favourite Star Trek movie. But I think I like the way they developed Zefram's character in this book better than they did in the movie. So, it's a good one to check out. Right, number 5. Name one of your favourite classics. Well, for this one, I chose War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells. I just think it's so cool that back in the 1800s, this guy was writing about alien invasions and time travel. How cool is that? This is an enjoyable book. It was also a bit of a strange one. And admittedly, it was written a long time ago, and writing styles change, but the thing that really struck me was that we learn almost nothing about the protagonist. We don't even learn his name. We don't learn his wife's name. He always refers to her as my wife. And basically, the main character in the story is just a blob. Everything that's going on around him is really captivating, but the character itself is nothing. And I'm wondering if the purpose there was to allow the reader to inject themselves into the story and actually cast themselves as the hero of the book. So yeah, really interesting writing style. But I really enjoy the alien invasion story and the depiction of the Martians, and yeah, really cool story. And number 6, name a book you would like to read that was first published in the year you were born. Well, I was born in 1978. So let's go and see if we can find some books that were published in 1978. Alright, so I found this page on Goodreads, the most popular books published in 1978. And there's some interesting things that I've noticed here. So right here on number 1, we've got The Stand by Stephen King, which I haven't read. Would you believe I've never read Stephen King before? This looks like it has an interesting premise. It's a post-apocalyptic. It's about the survivors after essentially the end of the world. So that could interest me. Well, this is interesting. And McCaffery, The White Dragon, one of the Pern books. I've been meaning to read The Dragon Riders of Pern for some time. It's already kind of on my radar. Of course, this is book 3, so I would want to read book 1 to begin with. So this is interesting. Dream Snake by Vonda N. McIntyre. I'm sure she's written a Star Trek book or 2, which I may have even read, but this is obviously one of her originals. So this is a science fiction book. Again, it's a post-apocalyptic, far in the future and long past the fall of civilization. And it sounds like it's got an alien snake in it, which interesting. It's a Hugo winner. There's lots of praise from various big names, so that sounds like a possible contender there. There's an Orson Scott Card one here. Treason. Is that one of his Endgame series, I wonder? Okay, so it looks like this is more a standalone rather than part of the Ender's Game series. I've read a couple of short stories in the Endgame series, but yeah, this could be a good launching on point for Orson Scott Card. It is a science fiction set on another planet, which is all appealing to me. Oh, here we go, Dinosaur Planet and McCaffery. So I'm guessing this is not the Dragon Riders series, but it's another series. But it is a book 1. I mean, dinosaurs are cool, and if you put dinosaurs on another planet, that makes them even more cool. You know what? I reckon this might be a goer. I reckon this might be the one. So, yep, I'll say Dinosaur Planet by Anne McCaffery. I'll add that to my list. Oh, that's the over 30 book tag for me. I'd be interested to know what you think of my picks. Are you interested in any of these books? Have you read any of them? And if you're over 30, why not do this tag as well? Because it's a bit of fun. Anyway, I've got some reading to do, so I'll see you out there somewhere. Catch you next time.